Welcome to the Total Relationship Podcast. I'm Kim Cochenour, your co-host, COO here at Forum Wealth Advisors. I've been working alongside Tyson Ray, your other co-host, for the last 5 years. And we're happy to be with you to bring another episode of the Total Relationship Podcast. Before we get into today, we just want to make sure if you have not listened to part 1 of No Story is the Same, we recommend that you go and do that because we're going to kind of jump in today and just keep going with our discovery deck. And so before we get into too much of that, we just want to make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of those other future episodes. So Tyson, last time we got to talk in depth about 3 of the 7 topics that we go through in the discovery deck. And you really hit well on that no client story is the same. So why is that important?
Wait. Say that again. I did something. Was that a compliment?
Yes. It was a compliment, and it's now recorded in perpetuity. You're welcome, everybody.
Yes. Listeners, those are rare. We're gonna celebrate when they happen on a podcast. Okay, try and continue if you can.
We were talking about how important it is that we ask these questions because every time you sit down with a client, every story is different. No story is the same. You learn from each one and you help apply it to every single one of them. But this is why we've decided that this is important to do with every single one of your clients.
Yeah, I find that these questions, there's just a harmony in an application that's almost universal, but how they're applied and how they're answered, especially within spouses and partners and how they get prioritized, evolve and change. And that's why we keep wanting to stay on top of them. And that's part of what the total relationship is. I'd like to talk about all of them in the order I usually ask the questions, but you being
I threw a wrench at you.
Yeah, you just kind of spread them out and keep it interesting, right? So, but
yeah. So last time we got to talk about retirement age and income, education, and business succession. So again, make sure you go back and listen to part 1 so you can capture the full picture of what the discovery deck can really do in your client meetings. So I think it's important that we kind of identify this is a way to ask questions of clients. You do a great job of helping us learn how to ask questions differently and get to the question behind the question. And if you want to follow along with the discovery deck questions, go to totalrelationship.com/discovery deck so you can get your free download of this and follow along with us today. So Tyson, we're jumping right in. Estate and legacy. Why is this such a big deal?
Well, so again, these discovery decks are given to the client and they get to put in priority, right? To pick back up from the first episode, they're going to put in priority what's most important to them. And so it'll be, I'm observing where this falls in the stack, right? Again, the word state and legacy, there's some questions on the back for them to kind of discern what that means to them. But I usually start by asking the question, which is a very important question for an advisor to ask. In the end, is there a specific dollar amount you want to leave to somebody?
Why?
Because in and of itself, that's a goal, right? In and of itself, especially when you get into the financial planning software, if there's a specific size of an estate that you want to leave in the end, it makes them harder, or they usually will have to live off of less.
Okay.
The few times that's come out, again, the answer why is back in my career, one of the concerns this client kept having that never seemed to need any money was they had it in their head that they wanted $6 million estate in the end to leave $2 million to each one of their 3 kids. And like their entire paradigm of their success in life was going to be judged off of this number they wrote on a piece of paper arbitrarily.
Wow.
And so I couldn't understand why they kept either wanting to take more risk or why they kept wanting why they weren't satisfied, right? I mean, they basically had everything that they wanted. In the end, it's just like this isn't growing fast enough. And ironically, if you actually ask any one of the kids, they'd be like, "Are you crazy? Like, enjoy your life. Like, we don't need it, or it's not this big." Like, and then the other thing that people don't realize is if there's a specific dollar amount in the end, and people don't take into consideration how long people are living. So it's like, okay, well, if you're going to live into your late 90s or 100, you're not giving this to them until they're 70 and 80. So if you think you're going to be helping them buy their first house or helping them in their retirement, like you may be giving while you're living. But estate and legacy starts with, what's the goal in the end? Is there a dollar amount? If there isn't, and a lot of times there's not, the question then becomes, it's kind of the extremes. Are you looking to die with your last penny? No, they kind of get the leftovers. I tend to ask the question, are you willing to sacrifice your standard of living to leave something more in the end?
Mm.
Because sometimes along this 30-year journey, like you might want to do some other things that in the end might the portfolio or the accounts might not grow enough that this is now principal that you're carving out. And sometimes it's to take a family vacation. Sometimes it impacts the family, right? But it's so what those questions are designed to do is both bring out the fact of, is there a dollar amount involved?
Yeah.
And also the why around who we're leaving it to. You'll start identifying, because again, we haven't gotten into a lot of details yet. You'll start identifying who matters to them, whether it's their kids, whether it's charities, whether it's other loved ones or individuals that they want to bless. So that's the first part. The second part, when this card shows up, is what have you done for what legal documents do you have? Well, do you know where they are? Do you know they're signed?
That's a big question. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, right?
Who's got the print copy? Yeah. What's digital? Yeah. What's printed? What's in the safe? What's with the attorney still?
Yes. And part of caring, which is part of that total relationship, is in this journey we go on to bring on a client, we'll ask for the signed documents. We'll ask for copies of, and not just the trust summary page that they can send you that's 3 pages. No, I want to see the whole thing. Yeah. And we've identified where just by taking the time to just peruse the document, things weren't signed, or they told me they wanted to leave these things to different loved ones, and that's not written in there. I had a case recently that they wanted to leave everything equally to the 7 kids. However, 2 kids are foster kids, and their estate planning documents don't recognize the foster kids. They're not named. It's not their bloodline. A legal adoption is a designation that allowed some of the other. They had a couple adopted kids, they had a couple foster kids, and then their own kids. They wanted to leave everything equally, and so we had to go back and redo those documents. And somehow, nobody bothered to catch that, right? Because no one's paying attention. Right? They drafted the documents before they ended up having these other kids, and somehow along the way, these are just part of the questions we get to ask when it comes to that estate and legacy. So another thing around the estate and legacy and the documents specifically is everybody thinks that estate planning is for death, and obviously that is part of it. But there's an aspect. It's also the documents that protect spouses and families in incapacitation, mm-hmm. accidents, strokes, different health events, that you're deciding ahead of time how to put people in power, mm-hmm. Either through trust documents or power of attorneys for healthcare, or power of attorneys for financial documents. And it's helping people kind of think through the other part of the estate and legacy is that what's the end game? What's the plan with regards to long-term care, with regards to who do you want to have care, where do you want to live, what do you want to do, are all things to get answers to and help mm-hmm. clients process the answers before they have the problem, because it's a lot less emotional. It's a lot easier to flush out what those things are. And then we have a roadmap to share with those loved ones when that time comes, that they thought about it, right? We're not all of a sudden in this crisis and having to go get a court order to basically be able to be a guardian to put mom in a care facility, or to basically make some healthcare decisions if these documents are in place. And so it's just an important part of the planning process. And the last statistic I remember seeing is 50% of the population has nothing done. Yeah.
So let's hit on that really quick. There's probably an attorney in your town near you. How do you help find the right one? What are some of the things that you need to be looking for to start the conversation with an attorney to start putting some of those documents in place?
Yeah, I think the best thing that can be done for a financial advisor is, one, you can get a lot of the answers. And quite frankly, I think you should be the one getting a lot of the answers as far as what's the goal in the end? Is there a dollar amount? Which loved one do you want to help take care of you? What are these? Who's going to take care of the kids if you're not here? And then when you act, and I think the mistake that too many advisors make is, even if they ask the questions to get the answers, then they turn these clients over to an attorney, and nothing against attorneys. But they let them go off on their own.
Mm.
And my preference, especially when I was starting out in my career, until I developed relationships with attorneys that I kind of pick and choose when I feel I need to do this, or I'll ask the client. But in the beginning, I wouldn't let a client go to an attorney without me being there.
Mm.
And what I found myself doing a lot of times was basically the attorney was speaking the language called the law, and the client was speaking the language called normal human.
Yeah.
And my
The
job was
heart.
to interpret, right?
Yeah.
Wait, oh, that's what this means, or this is what this means, or help. Sometimes attorneys have a bias one way or the other about trusts, or who's going to be a trustee, or how they feel about probate or not probate. And so you just kind of got to help make sure that the attorney heard what the clients were wanting. I heard what the attorney was needing or wanting or saying to kind of help the process move along.
Yeah.
And kind of that just goes back to being kind of that coach, as one of the roles an advisor gets to have in coaching the client through the process, where we're not drafting the documents. We need the attorney to draft the documents. We help the attorney and advocate for the attorney's fee, that is like, hey, this is going to protect and guide and direct everything you have. And so this isn't something to do on the cheap, right? This is something that's going to cost some money, but it's worth it because it's protection. And a lot of times doing that in front of the attorney for the benefit of the attorney to hear, hey, I'm advocating for you.
Yeah.
And just wanting to be a part of that relationship to make sure the clients didn't go in there and then there's miscommunications, or if the client changed their answers based on how the attorney answered the question, we're not reading off of different sheets of music because I'm not in that meeting hearing what that new answer is.
Yeah. Well, and I think it gives a client an opportunity to start thinking through those things with a trusted professional, the advisor being one of them, that sometimes they're not ready to have those conversations with their children or their adult children, or even it's hard between spouses. So it provides a good neutral place for the conversations to begin, and then have a couple trusted experts in the room to help make sure their needs are being met and then executed in documentation. So the one other thing I know you briefly touched on, I think that's really helpful, and part of what I actually really love and have a big heart for, is what organizations and causes that clients want to give to. And because I think often sometimes people forget that that's an option upon their passing, to be able to leave money for organizations to leave a legacy beyond themselves. And so that's something I actually really love that we make sure we touch on with our clients. All right. Next up is vehicles and major purchases. You, the way you talk about this with clients and just the routine in which they do it, and the amount of times I've been on meetings with other advisors who shake their head and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah."
Yeah,
So
like duh.
yeah, I know, but again, sometimes it's the things that are known. So there's long-term things that can impact clients if we're not making this topic a priority when we get to know them and reviewing it annually. So share your perspective on vehicles and major purchases with.
So again, this is the card that will show up. And we're trying to flush out with these cards, especially with vehicles, major purchases. We're trying to flush out, trying to understand, the word car can cost $5,000 to $10,000 for a used one, and hundreds of thousands of dollars for a collector's item.
Yeah.
Right.
Big
And so
difference.
it is, oh my gosh, it's a huge broad brush. Right. And so I have been known to peer out the window when a client or a prospect is showing up for the first time to see what they're driving.
Tell me
Just to
why.
start, well, because it's not, it's just a frame of reference. So then when I ask the questions, I start understanding some things. I've had multi-million-dollar farmers show up in a just welded together heap of sled stone. Their feet are through the floor, right? Probably moving the thing forward.
Yep.
And you wouldn't know they had anything, and
Yeah.
they just
Two
were
pennies to
very
rub
lost.
together.
Yep. And I've had people pull in Porsches literally and show up, and it's leased. They don't have a whole lot of, like, they're trying to project wealth they don't have, and it's costing them. So anyway, vehicles and major purchases. I guess I'll hit the vehicles first. It's people buy cars in usually one of three ways. And we either get it from our parents or we just evolved into this. And it is, we're going to drive them for a certain number of miles. Ironically, 100,000 miles is like this big, like demarcation point, time to get another one. A number of years. I have some clients that toss out a car at 10, 20,000 miles, but they've owned it for 3 years or 5 years or whatever the years are, that then now they got to get another one. Or I'm driving this thing until it's dead.
Yep.
And so two things there. One is to find out what is the rhythm of the purchase and what's driving it. And then trying to identify where are we at for the next one, because if and paying attention to what the vehicle is, the make, the model, the trim, is that kind of, if you're going to get another one, do you think you get the same one? They'll rattle off if they want something different because they already probably know
what that is. They've thought about it. Yep,
oh, yeah.
They've thought about it.
No, I think I'm going to get a hybrid or maybe, whatever. And so all this is designed to do is try and identify when are you going to need money in the tune of $50,000, $60,000, $80,000, depending on trade-in and what these things are, how far out in the future. And especially for people that are retiring, or you have the spouses. So now you're talking about two cars. One of the things I try and do before clients retire is if they have two vehicles and they're both, we're renewing these vehicles, is to try and get the rhythm of those purchases as far apart as possible, because
stagger that expense.
Yeah.
That's huge.
You retire, you shut off your income, you both retire, and then in the next 6 months, you both want to buy, $150,000 worth of cars. Like, wait a minute, that
doesn't work.
Well, or you might want to, while you have the income, buy the new car, have it paid off, and now we have this period of time or number of miles before we have to worry about it again.
Yeah.
And just helping them see the wisdom in that.
Yeah.
Helping them realize it's like, okay, the rhythm that you've been going on, if we project that rhythm out and you want to retire at this age, where's that car purchase falling? Is it right before or right after? Do we want to drive one a little bit longer to let the other spouse kind of get one, and then we go every 2, 3, 4 years? But it is especially when you're trying not to have debt payments, and then there's a whole part of financing cars or not financing cars. It's just an important financial piece that it's just like, that's the whole point of an advisor's role, is to help the client and themselves identify the knowns. Like, what are the things we know are going to happen to plan for them? Because life's going to throw all kinds of things we don't know.
Yeah.
And major purchases and vehicles are knowns. So major purchases, and again, this is kind of sometimes just like the dreaming stuff. It's toys or luxuries, or it could be boats. I remember a client years back, he always wanted, like, the dream purchase was the RV. And I'm talking like the $150,000 or $200,000, park it at the college football game, tailgate bells, for the weekend.
Whistles, everything.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure.
And I remember this specific client, and the portfolio crossed a demarcation point of a couple $1 million. And I said to him, hey, or he called and he's all excited he crossed this milestone. He's like, I said, what do you think? And he's like, well, I look forward to the next $1 million. And I'm kind of like, huh, really? He's like, yeah. I said, well, that's not what I was thinking. He's like, I said, because the next $1 million there wasn't a goal for the kids, right? Yeah. It wasn't just more money. I said, what I was thinking was this RV. Oh, no, I couldn't do that. I'm like, wait a minute. You just made the RV last year and the return. Like, what do you, like, the markets are up. Your cash flow is like, check all the boxes. This is now extra profit. Why don't we carve it out and buy it? No. And it took about 2 years, and I bugged him every time I talked to him. And sure enough, when he finally went and got the thing, his exact words were, oh, I should have done this sooner.
But you had to be there to remind him of that, because how many books have we all read that actually talk about, like, you're going to get to that thing and then you're going to want the next thing and you're going to want the next thing, and it's never going to be enough. That's part of our human nature. But part of the advisor's job is to remind the client what this is for, and that it's actually there to be used. It's not there just to sit and live in this constant state of never actually enjoying your money. You're in the permission business.
Yeah. And it was also helping them realize it's like, yes, it's going to depreciate in value some, but it's not like you're going to just lose $200,000 day one. So that's how I got them to tip over on the idea. I'm like, let's go buy one. Let's try it for a football season. If you don't like it, you're going to sell it. What are you going to lose? 20 or 30 or 40 grand, maybe? And he's, oh, yeah, I guess. I said, well, let's go try it. And it was, it just reiterated. So asking the questions for major purchase, or realize, and this is the other part, it's not trying to encourage someone to be someone they're not. I have a couple clients that we'd go through these cars and vehicles and major purchases are one of them. It's like, drive them till they're dead. I would rather ride my bicycle or not leave my house. Any major purchases? No. And their level, what we call it funded contentment, right? Yep. The level that they need to have contentment is extremely low. And we'll go through exercises of encouraging them to try and different things as a way of just opting or just helping to make sure that they're not sacrificing things they don't want to sacrifice or regret things later on. But there are plenty of people that are totally content not having major purchases, not having these nice, these new cars every now and then. And then again, my feeling on cars is there's no such thing as a new car, because the second you drive off the lot, it's not new anymore.
Yeah.
But these are just, again, it's flushing out the knowns. If you've worked your whole life and another major purchase that, it's in some of that falls into second homes or a boat. We have another client that I was just like, really? That's what I was thinking. I didn't say it. They're like, when we hit 50, we want to sell all the real estate, buy a several $100,000 seaworthy, ocean-worthy catamaran, and we want to just go sail around the world. They just want to go from port to port to port. And God bless them, they did it. Everybody thinks they're nuts, but that's what they wanted to do, right? It's just like, hey, okay, let's plan for that. Let's flush out what are these knowns, and that's what these cards are designed to try and do.
Yeah. Well, you kind of tapped into it is there, and it kind of leads into the next card of home and home improvement is there's an emotional attachment that other people have to certain things. And so that's why you ask the questions over different areas, because some people will have more of an emotional attachment to a car because that was the car that their grandpa drove and that's why they got it and restored it. Or this is the home that my mom lived with us in, and I'm not ever going to get rid of it. And so it's kind of identifying what are the things we need to be aware of as the advisor with the client to help them make those decisions when the cash flow questions come up or the dreaming comes up. So touch briefly on home and home improvement inside some of those questions you think are important to ask.
Yep. So again, we'll see where this card shows up in the list of what's most important. A lot of the questions around the current home is, are we retiring in place? In the future, do you see yourself, changing where you live? And not asking them, are you going to, upsize or downsize? Because those could have negative connotations assigned to them. It's just understanding what it is they are already thinking, and then watching, are they aligned with their spouse on that idea of downsizing or increasing the house?
Usually they can be on very different pages about that. Absolutely.
Yep. And this can also be whether or not there's a second home or a second residence that they want to try or think about. Again, flushing out the knowns, trying to identify where money may or may not be needed. And then when you get into home improvements, this is another just place where 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 purchases can be done depending on additions, home improvements, remodeling the basements, replacing roofs, replacing windows. The furnace is going to break, the septic is going to boil over. After 23 years, 24 years of being married, I was told when I first got married, my mom said, your wife is going to spend the rest of her life nesting. And she made the analogy like a bird every year just doesn't plunk down in the same old nest. Oh no, they're getting new sticks and some new feathers, and they're building that.
Yes, moss.
They're building that sucker up. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
More comfy, more cozy.
Yeah. And so I learned to ask the question on home improvements, because guess what? A lot of times there's one of the two people sitting there that's all of a sudden like, no, I want to redo the flooring and I want to do this and I want to do that. And they just want to know what the money is or when it can be given to them. They don't want to overspend. They don't want to do it where they're regretting, right? They don't want to put themselves in any kind of pickle, but those purposes of what the money is for is there.
Yeah.
And so helping them realize, okay, or prioritize, what's the crisis, roof, windows, right? That something's leaking or breaking or not working. But a lot of times part of the joy of life is that nesting, right? And giving it a new look and replacing. And most clients in that 30-year retirement they're going through are going to replace the roof, replace the windows, and those are just upkeep maintenance. But guess what? Carpet wears out. Kitchens get turned over, or you have a different purpose when you're raising a family that now you're not raising the family, and how you want to lay it out a little differently. Or heaven forbid, those little grandkids show up, right? And so now we got to redo some things because those little
they
rascals
change everything.
Oh my goodness, right? So it's just again flushing out what is known in a way that makes it comfortable for people to share their hearts with with their most important spouse sitting next to them, sometimes not knowing that wish list was even there.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard and been part of client meetings where even that concept of like they didn't know that was something that they wanted to do, but I've seen it even more in travel and leisure, where there is a spouse who wants to go out and they want to see the world, and then the other spouse is like, I really like the state we live in. So the last question we're going to dig into and wrap this up for everybody is giving clients the opportunity to dream, because they've spent a lot of time, and one of them might be a big dreamer and the other one's just like, I'm just glad that I'm approaching retirement. And asking them how much time do they want to travel, and kind of give them the freedom to dream in that safe space with the advisor at the table.
Now, I wouldn't. I think one of the roles an advisor gets to have with couples is like couples therapy.
Yeah, it's a safe space there with you.
Oh my gosh, because again, you flush these out and you may find out what you're talking about. I have some clients that one client doesn't fly and doesn't want to travel at all, and then the other one does. And I don't know what they did before we met, but when they came to me, I'm like, great, let's do both. Like, who do you want to travel with? Because he's not coming with you. And I've had the reverse that, she doesn't want to travel because she loves the grandkids and quilting and doesn't want to miss anything. And he wants to travel. And it's just like part of relationships is go be refreshed and then come back being refreshed without the resentment. You didn't drag this other person on doing something, which is no fun, right? That's not a vacation.
Yeah.
But so again, these cards show up, travel's there. And what I would ask is, what does a normal travel year look like now? And they'll tell you, we take one international trip and then we do this and this and this, or we don't do anything. If they don't do anything, then it's like, okay, what do you think travel is going to look like? Where do you want to
go? Yeah, what do you want to
do? Because again, some of this is flushing out. I don't care how much they travel or where they're going. I'm interested. It's again trying to know what the known is as far as what is it going to cost, especially in retirement. I've had clients that told me, and this is where some of these kind of all bubble together. It's like, I want to retire and we are going to do a round the world trip. It's a couple months. I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on travel to go back and have those memories. And in looking back on that at the moment, I'm like, wow, that's kind of like, like, really? Not saying anything, just really? Yeah. But then 10 years later, when he lost his wife, those were the best memories he could have. Money can't buy those types of experiences and things. Yeah. He to this day remembers those trips and the experiences that they had, that had they been frugal or had they listened to some advisors say, oh my gosh, why are you going to spend the money to do that? Or listen to the stereotype of what the world could say about that. It's like, people just need to live their lives. And part of these cards, travel and leisure, is to flush out what charges you up, what brings you joy in life, and who do you want to do that with? Sometimes with these spouses and partners, and sometimes with friends, and sometimes just by yourself, because you're a better person for it. And again, it's what all this money you saved for your whole life is for. And this is the opportunity for an advisor to take that total relationship and have the questions to flush out what is it they want to do with this money they have.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes the piece that you hit on is, how can you do that well and empower them to, if it's not the spouse, how can they still find enjoyment in what their dreams and wishes are with someone else that they care about too? That there's plenty of things that you can do with your spouse, but travel, sometimes they're just not aligned. And that's okay if you want to take your sister or your mom or your daughter, or I say sister, mom, daughter, because I have all of those myself, but it's like, how can you find a way to still live your best life in retirement? And to your point, come back refreshed and keep the focus of what you guys want to do together and individually. So Tyson, wrapping up these main discovery deck questions, it's just a great opportunity for the client and advisor to just start the foundation of a great relationship, and that you actually really can learn more about them, so you can show them that you really do care, that it's beyond their portfolio. You didn't talk anything about that with these questions. It's really just getting to the heart of building relationship and getting to know the clients really well. So what would you want to leave the listeners with today?
Well, I think we need to leave them with an apology because we're supposed to keep this in 20 minutes. And then we got excited. We tried to put 4 cards in there. Maybe we should have stuck with 3, right? So, but no, this is again for you that's the advisor hearing this. This is the opportunity or a different way of going about fact finding and getting questions and facts and feelings flushed out and how they relate to couples. And if you're hearing this and you have an advisor or you don't have an advisor, this is the type of conversation you need to be having, is to start prioritizing how does this all come together. Yeah. And we're not done, right, Kim? Because apparently we got another episode coming where we're going to get into, what are we getting into?
So we're actually going to get into kind of some of the typical client worries. And so we're going to hit those head on, talk about the elephant in the room. So make sure that you are subscribed to Total Relationship. Follow us over on our website. And if you want to follow along again on the discovery deck, go to totalrelationship.com/discovery deck. And you can find Tyson and I over on LinkedIn, and we'd love to connect with you.
Okay, I'm on a disclosure, like one quick disclosure, because like I feel like, hey, this whole subscribe thing, like it's like, not please subscribe because we're trying to get more clicks or because we're trying to sell product or we're trying to like scam. It's like, it's the way apparently the algorithms help make sure you, when we have the episode, it shows up on your end and it helps us realize, hey, there's people who actually are listening to this.
Yes, yeah, it's to make sure they don't miss it. That's up
for
to them,
you, not for us. Because I feel like it's like, hey, subscribe. It's like, oh my God, it makes me want to puke.
Yeah, no worries. That is not what it is. But we're glad to have them here, and hopefully we do have some people who are coming back for the content. So thanks.